a photo dropped. That's it. No diss track, no subliminal tweet, no leaked DM. Just a photo of Lil Yachty and ASAP Rocky in the same room, looking like the friends they've always been. And Drake's fanbase lost their minds. We're in June 2026, and somehow a picture of two rappers hanging out became a full-blown internet trial. Yachty is being called a snake, a traitor, a clout chaser, and a whole lot of other things that would surprise literally anyone who has followed Yachty's career and knows what his relationship with Rocky actually looks like. Rocky definitely hasn't said a word, but the fans have plenty to say. And honestly, the reaction to this photo raises a more interesting question than the photo itself. In hip-hop, does loyalty to a friend mean you have to treat their enemies like your own? Is Yachty actually wrong here? Or are people projecting an unwritten code onto someone who never signed up for it? Rocky has always moved in that lane where high fashion and hip-hop blur into one thing. Gucci campaigns, Prada runways, a personal aesthetic that made him a reference point for a whole generation of artists who cared about what they wore as much as what they rapped. Yachty fits right into that world. Yachty has always been a fashion-forward guy. He did his thing with Gap. He's been front row at shows. He's the kind of artist who takes the culture beyond just music. So these two gravitating toward each other makes complete sense if you actually know either of them. Their connection isn't about Drake. It was never about Drake. That's the part getting lost in all of this. Now, to understand why Drake fans are reacting the way they are, you need to understand how Rocky and Drake ended up on opposite sides. The short version, Rihanna. Both of them dated her. That's where the personal tension started. And in hip-hop, personal tension has a way of spilling into the music eventually. Rocky was the one who threw the first documented shot on record. His track, Stole Ya Flow, had a line that was about as direct as it gets. First you stole my flow, so I stole your bitch. No subtext. No plausible deniability. That's a full-on accusation. You took my style, so I took your woman. Rocky wasn't whispering about it. He put it on a song. Drake, being Drake, wasn't going to let that sit. When he dropped Iceman in May 2026, the track Burning Bridges went after both Rocky and Rihanna. Drake doesn't do subtle when he's genuinely irritated, and this was one of those moments where you could tell it was personal. The record didn't land as one of his biggest cultural moments. This wasn't back-to-back energy, but it made clear that he viewed what Rocky did as a genuine violation, not just rap beef for sport. So, by the time we get to June 2026, the tension between Rocky and Drake is real, documented, and on record. And that's the context in which a photo of Yachty and Rocky surfaces. Here's where it gets genuinely complicated, because Yachty's relationship with Drake is not casual. Yachty was one of Drake's actual creative collaborators through the early to mid-2020s. He co-wrote On Her Loss. He was in the room on For All the Dogs. That's not a feature credit. That's sitting in the studio, contributing to the artistic process, being trusted with someone's album. That's a serious level of access and closeness. And it mattered to people who followed both careers, because it said something about Drake taking Yachty seriously as a creative force, not just a novelty. But the relationship hasn't been perfectly smooth. In 2024, there was a moment that actually did create some real distance between them. A leaked song called Super Soak caused enough friction that Yachty unfollowed Drake on Instagram. If you've ever watched how artists use social media as a communication tool, an unfollow isn't nothing. It's a signal. It generated its own round of speculation and discourse about what was happening between them. Then in February 2026, Yachty went on record saying things were good between him and Drake.
Podcasting is tricky when you are a active, prominent figure in the
Squashed, moving forward. And people took that at face value, because why wouldn't you? So the timeline here is deep creative collaboration, a rough patch, a reconciliation, and then 4 months later, a photo with ASAP Rocky that reignites everything. There's one more layer here that adds a strange texture to the whole thing, and it's the fact that Kendrick Lamar, Drake's biggest rival, the man who spent 2024 dismantling Drake's reputation line by line, also brought Yachty into it. On Euphoria, one of the most talked about diss tracks in recent hip-hop memory, Kendrick had a bar aimed at Drake that included Yachty by name. Yachty can't give you no swag neither. It was a dig at Drake's creative circle, an argument that the people around Drake couldn't actually elevate him stylistically. Now think about what that means for Yachty's position in all of this. He was close enough to Drake to be name-dropped in a diss track aimed at Drake. He was so associated with Drake's world that Kendrick used him as an example of Drake's limitations. And yet, here he is, still maintaining his own friendships with people in entirely different corners of the rap world. Yachty didn't respond to Kendrick's bar publicly. He didn't make a big deal of it. He just kept doing what Yachty does, making music, staying creative, moving through the culture at his own pace. Let's be real about what's happening here. Drake fans aren't just reacting to a photo. They're reacting to what the photo represents in their minds. A perceived side-switching, a signal that Yachty is distancing himself from Drake's camp and aligning with the opposition. The logic goes something like this. Rocky dissed Drake. Rocky and Drake are beefing. Yachty is supposed to be Drake's people, therefore Yachty hanging with Rocky is a betrayal. It's clean logic. It's also wildly reductive, because what it requires you to ignore is everything that existed before the beef. Yachty and Rocky's friendship didn't start in 2026. It didn't start because Drake and Rocky are at odds. It predates this whole situation by years. Yachty didn't seek Rocky out after the beef started to make some kind of statement. He just has a friend he's had for a long time. And he's apparently still being that friend. The expectation being placed on Yachty is that he should restructure his entire social world around Drake's conflicts, that every beef Drake enters is a beef Yachty is automatically enrolled in. That loyalty means not just having Drake's back, but having Drake's enemies as your enemies by default. That's a heavy thing to put on someone. And it's worth asking whether Drake himself has actually communicated that expectation to Yachty, or whether this is entirely fans writing rules that nobody agreed to. Hip-hop has a complicated relationship with loyalty, and it's worth sitting with that for a second. On one hand, the culture does have a genuine tradition of ride or die allegiance. You back your people. You don't cross the aisle during an active conflict. You don't make it easy for your friend's opponent by giving them access to your world. That's real, and it's not a made-up rule. It comes from genuine communal bonds that have defined crews, labels, and movements throughout the genre's history. On the other hand, hip-hop is also full of examples of artists maintaining cross-camp relationships that don't fit neatly into anyone's beef narrative. Artists who have friends everywhere, who refuse to let someone else's conflict become their own, who understand that the music industry is small and the world is complicated, and not everything is black and white. Rocky himself is actually a good example of this. Rocky has his own code, and that code has generally not involved letting other people's relationship dynamics dictate who he keeps in his circle. He does what Rocky does. That's always been part of his identity. So you have two people, Yachty and Rocky, who both seem to operate with the understanding that their individual relationships belong to them. And the fallout is Drake fans treating a photo like it's a press release announcing a new alliance. It's worth emphasizing something that has gotten buried under the reaction. Nobody has said anything official. Not Yachty, not Drake, not Rocky. Drake has not put out any kind of signal that he considers Yachty's friendship with Rocky a problem. He hasn't unfollowed anyone, hasn't posted anything cryptic, hasn't sent the OVO bat signal. Yachty hasn't addressed it. He's not out here explaining himself or defending the friendship, which is actually the most sensible response available, because why should he have to explain a years-long friendship to the internet? Rocky, as expected, has not commented on any of it. Rocky moves on Rocky time. The entire discourse is being generated by people who are not involved in any of these relationships, projecting their own sense of how loyalty should work onto artists who may have a much more nuanced private understanding of where they all stand. And this is the thing about social media and celebrity culture in 2026. Fans have become so invested in these parasocial relationships that they genuinely feel personally affected by a photo of two rappers. Like this is something that was done to them. Something getting zero attention in this conversation is the actual creative loss that would happen if artists started self-censoring their collaborations and friendships based on rap beef alignment charts. Yachty is one of the more genuinely interesting artists of his generation. He went from being the boat emoji guy to releasing Let's Start Here, an album that surprised nearly everyone with its psychedelic rock influences and willingness to abandon everything expected of him. He makes music with people across genres, scenes, and sonic worlds. That eclecticism is a big part of what makes him valuable. Rocky is the same way. Rocky doesn't stay in one lane. His catalog moves through boom bap, experimental production, trap influences, and pure aesthetic exercise. Two artists like this maintaining a friendship isn't suspicious. It's actually kind of natural if the expectation is that Yachty should cut off Rocky because of what Rocky said about Drake on a track. The real casualty is creative freedom, the idea that beef should wall off entire quadrants of the culture from each other is genuinely bad for music, even if it's satisfying for fan tribalism. None of this means Yachty owes the public an explanation. None of this means Rocky and Drake's beef isn't real. And none of this means Drake's fans don't have a genuine emotional response rooted in years of following and caring about Drake's music. But what this moment does is expose something about how we've started to treat artist relationships like they're team sports franchises. You can't be traded. You can't have friendships with free agents. Every move is analyzed for what it signals about your allegiances. And if you step outside the approved social boundaries, you get dragged. Not by the artist you supposedly wronged, but by their fan base. Speaking on